911, what is your emergency?
Get off the field!
911 has faced nearly every emergency on Earth. ABC Thursdays, they will go where no first responders have gone before.
5 everyday heroes were launched into space.
All contact with the spacecraft was lost due to a sudden geomagnetic storm.
Mission Control, do you copy?
911, all new Thursdays, 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
The jury's verdict in Florida versus Donna Adelson marked the 5th conviction in the murder plot to kill FSU law professor Dan Markel. For the jurors, it was the end of the road. But for the rest of us, it was only the end of what was heard in court. Behind the scenes, there were hearings the jury was excluded from, evidence that never made it into the courtroom, and even wiretaps the jurors didn't know existed, including secret recordings between Harvey Adelson and a jailhouse informant. For the jurors, it was the end of the road. But for the rest of us, it was only the end of what was heard in court. Behind the scenes, there were hearings the jury was excluded from, evidence that never made it into the courtroom, and even wiretaps the jurors didn't know existed, including secret recordings between Harvey Adelson and a jailhouse informant. A trial tells 2 stories built from the same evidence. One from the prosecution, one from the defense. But would evidence the jury never saw craft a 3rd narrative? Could those missing pieces be enough to change the way you see the truth? Or do they only confirm the verdict the jury reached? In this episode, we step outside the jury box to uncover suppressed evidence, hidden testimonies, and questions that still linger about Donna Adelson, her family, and the murder of Dan Markel. We'll also get a window into the deliberation room from the jury foreperson, offering us a rare glimpse of what the jurors really thought about Donna, Wendy, Rob, and some of the trial's most controversial witnesses. Plus, as I was writing this episode, a shocking new filing from Donna Adelson herself as she refuses to accept her fate. The prosecution says she conspired a murder. The defense says she's simply an overbearing mother. But it's the jurors who had the final say. I'm your host, Brandy Churchwell, and this is 13th Juror Podcast. Today's episode is Florida versus Donna Adelson, Part 3, Beyond the Jury Box. Prosecutors Georgia Kappelman and Sarah Catherine Dugan entered into Donna Adelson's trial with years of experience. In fact, this was their 4th time prosecuting someone tied to the murder of Dan Markel. They knew the case inside and out, from transcripts to witnesses to evidence. Kappelman and Dugan were able to test some arguments in previous trials related to Dan Markel's death, refine their strategy with each conviction, and were ready for battle again. But across the aisle, the defense's road to trial was anything but smooth. Donna Adelson was originally set to stand trial in September of 2024. But on the very first day of jury selection, everything derailed. Let's back up for a second. Donna's attorney, Dan Rashbaum, had also represented Charlie Adelson in his 2023 trial, which ended in a conviction for his role in the murder of Dan Markel. Now, despite this obvious conflict of interest, Donna hired Rashbaum anyway and waived conflicts in order to keep him on her side. But less than 24 hours before the jury selection was set to start in Donna's trial, Charlie Adelson refused to waive his attorney-client privilege with Rashbaum, meaning Rashbaum couldn't cross-examine him. In other words, Charlie blocked the one person who knew his case inside and out from challenging him on the stand. From Charlie's standpoint, it was the smartest move. He had an appeal pending, and his legal interests don't fully align with his mother's. But by refusing to waive that conflict, he stripped Donna's defense of what could have been a powerful opportunity to attack his credibility. When this came to light, presiding judge Stephen Everett was visibly frustrated with the 11th hour filing, and even pointed out that this conflict had existed all along. Judge Everett mentioned a continuance, but Donna was desperate to prevent any delay. She waived any conflict and even her right to appeal on ineffective representation. But Charlie's appellate attorney wouldn't sign off. And without that waiver, Rashbaum had no choice but to step aside. And so the trial was delayed. Donna broke down in the courtroom, sobbing as the bailiff led her away. To make matters worse, Charlie, Katie McBanawa, and Luis Rivera had already been transported to Leon County to testify. And Judge Everett told Donna's defense they might be charged for those transportation costs. Donna's other attorney, Robert Morris, was allowed to stay on the case, at least for a moment. Just 3 weeks later, Judge Everett disqualified him too, citing concerns over sharing privileged information. Even Donna's investigator, Eddie Varnes, was barred from testifying before the court later reconsidered. Finally, Josh Zellman and Jackie Fulford stepped in as Donna's new attorneys, rushing to catch up on a case that the state had been preparing for years. By the time Donna's trial actually started and the jury was sworn in, it was almost a year after all these issues began. The prosecution was polished and prepared. The defense, however, was still reeling, scrambling to hold itself together. This imbalance became clear when the defense began presenting its case. Part of the defense's strategy was to convince jurors that Wendy Adelson's divorce wasn't as hostile as the prosecution claimed. They wanted the jury to see it as nothing more than an ordinary custody dispute. Messy, yes, but not motive for murder. What made this argument even stranger is that Wendy herself admitted her divorce was contentious. So why bring in two family law attorneys to contradict her? On the stand, Kristen Adamson and Linda Bailey did exactly that. Downplayed the conflict and told jurors the divorce wasn't the bitter war prosecutors described. It was routine, even amicable. Bailey, who hadn't represented either party but reviewed the files, went further. She said there was nothing unusual about Donna's involvement or even the $1 million offer. She testified the divorce was settled amicably, everyone moving on with their lives, and even defended the derogatory nickname Donna and Wendy used for Dan. But when prosecutor Georgia Kappelman got her turn on cross-examination, the clash was immediate. She argued that while divorce attorneys may see far worse cases every day, for Dan and Wendy, this was the only one. To them, it could be a huge deal. She drove her point home with an analogy. It's like garbage. To a garbage collector who hauls it every day, it might not smell. But to the average person, their one bag of garbage stinks. Bailey refused to concede even that point. After a blistering cross, social media lit up. To many observers, it seemed like Donna's defense had fallen flat. Now, when I asked JC, the jury foreperson, what she thought, she admitted the testimony was informative. She learned quite a bit about family law. But as far as relevance to Donna's case, she didn't see where it fit in. She also told me Bailey's answers often came across as arrogant, a frustration that carried into deliberations. One moment in particular stuck with the jury. When Bailey downplayed the $80,000 that Dan supposedly hadn't paid Wendy yet. She said it wasn't a big deal. JC told me the jurors disagreed. To them and a lot of people, $80,000 is a very big deal. In the end, the defense may have hoped these witnesses would support their case. But to jurors, Adamson and Bailey seemed more like a distraction than a defense. Aside from trying to downplay the motive, Donna's defense also leaned on the extortion twist, a way to explain away the money trail. Now, to jurors, it may have sounded like a shocking new development, but in reality, that bombshell had been dropped nearly 2 years earlier, during Charlie Adelson's trial. In his opening statement, defense attorney Dan Rashbaum told the jury that on July 18, 2014, 2 crimes occurred: the brutal murder of Dan Markell and something else. Rashbaum's story went like this. Charlie got the call that something had happened to Dan. He called Katie, who came over to comfort him. Once there, she told him something terrible had happened, and that she had nothing to do with it, but admitted that a friend of hers shot Dan. Katie repeated over and over that she wasn't involved, but confessed that she had, quote, talked too much, mentioning the $1 million bribe to a friend who got it in his head to go and do this. Now, Charlie pressed her for names, but Katie wouldn't answer, saying it wasn't safe for him to know. Then came the threat. Katie told him they wanted money, and he had 48 hours to pay, or he or one of his family members would be next. Now, according to Rashbaum, the first payment was everything Charlie had in his safe, more than $100,000. But it wasn't enough. The demand was for over $300,000. So Charlie had to keep paying. He believed Katie when she said she wasn't involved. She even warned him that if he ever talked, his whole family would be killed. Charlie did talk, though, to his mother, Donna. Rashbaum said Charlie had no other choice but to put Katie on the payroll at the Adelson Institute to help cover the payments, and that it was Donna who kept those books. Katie continually maintained that she wasn't involved, but according to Rashbaum, she's the one who planned the whole thing. She'd heard Charlie's joke about hiring a hitman, but said that a TV was cheaper, and then heard about the $1 million offer to Dan Markel. Those things put the idea in her head and set the whole plan in motion. Charlie's trial was the first time anyone had heard the extortion defense, even the prosecutors. And when Wendy Adelson took the stand in Charlie's trial, the twist only deepened. Georgia Kappelman pressed her. In all the years this case has been pending, your brother has known who killed your children's father, and you didn't know? Wendy replied that she had only just learned it, that her brother was being blackmailed, and that he knew who was behind the murder all along. Now, fast forward to Donna's trial with this story resurfaced, and Kappelman wasted no time dismantling it. She methodically laid out the shifting details, the fuzzy timeline, and the lack of any corroboration. Piece by piece, she argued the extortion claim was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. And as the holes in the story grew, Donna's defense subtly shifted. Instead of asking jurors to believe the extortion really happened, they argued that Donna believed it happened because Charlie told her so. If jurors accepted that, Donna's actions might look less like conspiracy and more like confusion. But the jury didn't buy it. JC told me that the state had proven otherwise, and the extortion defense, or even the idea that Donna truly believed it, wasn't reasonable enough to create doubt. Even though Charlie's story had its own believability issues, the other co-conspirators, Luis Rivera and Katie McBanawa, brought credibility problems of their own. Both had already been convicted. Both were killers turned state witnesses. And both had something to gain. The state leaned on them to connect the dots, but the defense pushed back hard, telling jurors their testimony was riddled with lies and self-interest. Katie McBanawa shifted her story again and again. Luis Rivera had cut a deal in exchange for his testimony. Yes, their accounts filled in some gaps, and much of what they described was corroborated. But the jury still had to ask, how much could they trust them? I asked JC whether Luis and Katie played a crucial role in deliberations. She told me she was careful in how she weighed their credibility, knowing they were co-conspirators.
I mean, she's definitely involved, obviously. I don't think she was admitting to how fully involved she was. She probably knew more than what she was telling us she knew. But as far as just like overall credibility, those two, we didn't rely 100% on what they were saying.
She noticed the defense trying to use Luis to their advantage, highlighting that when asked who was behind the plot, he pointed to Wendy, not Donna. But JC caught something the defense didn't emphasize. Luis also said that if he had known who was really behind it, he would have just robbed them. That told her he didn't actually know who was calling the shots, despite what the defense wanted the jury to believe. As for Katie, JC felt she probably knew more than she let on. Maybe she was holding back out of fear of Sigfredo Garcia. But one detail in particular stuck with jurors: Katie's account of Donna herself dropping off the money. That piece later became an important part of the puzzle to the jury.
Insurance may all seem the same on the surface, but having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like getting a granola bar with a candle in it when you wanted a 3-layer birthday cake. You wouldn't settle for just any dessert on your birthday, so don't settle for just any insurance. When it comes to getting the help you need, State Farm is the real deal. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
I'm Dr. Sarah Ray Hall, the founder and CEO of Armra. I developed Armra Colostrum because I know your body was designed to thrive. It's your natural state, your birthright, and you can reclaim it. Colostrum is the first nutrition we receive in life, with every essential nutrient our bodies need. It's nature's original blueprint for health. After a devastating health crisis almost took my life, I made it my mission to harness this power. Using proprietary technology, Armra captures over 400 bioactive nutrients in every scoop, delivering over 1,000 benefits that transform your health at its foundation. Whether for gut health, metabolism, skin, hair, immunity, mood, energy, fitness, or recovery, I invite you to join this collective revival of health and discover radical transformation for yourself. Visit armra.com, that's ARMRA.com, and enter code CULTURE30 for 30% off your first subscription order. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Katie's credibility was shaky, and Donna's attorneys thought they had a way to expose it. Two women, Cassidy Conroy and Brittany Purcell, had both been locked up with Katie. Now, according to Donna, these women claimed that Katie made some damning admissions that could have changed the entire narrative. Here's what Donna said these women told her. Cassidy Conroy described Katie bragging that she intended to set up the Adelson family in hopes of getting a reduced sentence. Now, according to Donna, Katie told Conroy, "Wait until I come back. I'm going to take care of that family. Wait till they see what they're going to get, and I'm going to get a reduced sentence." Now, Brittany Purcell's account, Donna said, was even more colorful. Purcell allegedly told her that Katie admitted her plan had failed, that if it had worked, she'd be sitting in Hawaii with a fancy drink in her hand. Purcell also claimed Katie openly admitted to blackmailing Charlie. But there was a problem. Both informants were unreliable. Conroy's statements, Donna said, were from October, and Purcell's were around Thanksgiving. But by the time of this hearing in January, both women were about to be released. Donna was concerned that one of them would return to drug use and the other would be unreachable because she didn't have a home or a phone where she could be contacted. In the end, neither Conroy nor Purcell ever took the stand. Jurors never heard any of it, and the defense lost a chance to cast more doubt on Katie McBanawaz's credibility. So, Conroy and Purcell never made it to the stand, but two other jailhouse informants did. Now, what these informants told investigators sparked closed-door hearings, ex parte meetings with the judge, and eventually pulled Donna's defense team and Harvey Adelson right into the center of a controversy. The informants, Drina Bernhardt and Patricia Bird, claimed Donna had offered to pay for testimony. Their testimony, including the now infamous script, became some of the most shocking and talked about moments of Donna's trial. But what jurors didn't know was that the controversy surrounding Bernhardt and Bird went much deeper than what they heard on the stand. In December of 2024, after learning of the alleged pay-for-testimony scheme, prosecutors secured a warrant for Harvey Adelson's cell phone records. When investigators compared those records to calls from Leon County Jail, calls from Donna's attorneys, and their visitation logs at the jail, something unusual emerged. The communication overlapped. Now, according to the state, that suggested some troubling possibilities: potential witness tampering, or Donna relaying information to Harvey through attorney-client calls, which are privileged and not monitored. And then another red flag. After Harvey's records were subpoenaed, he abruptly switched cell phone carriers. Prosecutors didn't take chances. They requested a wiretap for Harvey's phone, and Judge Everett granted it. From early January until February 24th, 2025, Harvey's phone was recorded. And on those tapes, conversations were captured between Harvey and at least one jailhouse informant. The jury never heard those recordings. In fact, Donna's defense didn't even know about them until April, when they were handed a flash drive with the intercepted calls. By then, a new investigation had already been launched. What it involves remains sealed to this day. Donna's attorneys were furious. They accused Judge Everett of improper ex parte communications with prosecutors when he signed off on the warrants, claiming it undermined Donna's right to a fair trial. They even tried to have him removed from the case. He refused, and the appellate court backed him, calling Donna's appeal an attack on common practice. 2 weeks before the trial, Donna's defense fought to exclude any testimony related to this new investigation. The documents were heavily redacted and the details sealed. In the end, only a narrow version of the informant's testimony made it before jurors. But according to the jury foreperson, JC, even that limited testimony mattered. She told me the script came up during deliberations and that one word stood out: extort. It was a word used often by Donna's defense and throughout Charlie's trial. JC said she didn't believe the informant would have come up with it on her own, and that made the testimony ring true.
I don't remember who exactly pointed it out, but the connection between the email Donna sent Wendy with her script for Charlie's trial, Wendy's testimony in Charlie's trial, and then the fact that Wendy wrote a script for Miss Drina Bernhardt for her to be a witness. And then, of course, the word extort being emphasized multiple times. I feel like that girl probably wouldn't have come up with that word on her own.
The defense hinted that they would explain why Donna wrote the so-called script, even suggesting that Bernhardt pressured her into it. But that explanation never came. Instead, they just kind of moved on. No follow-through. No real counter-narrative. For jurors, that silence was confusing. JC told me the script felt like a critical piece of evidence, something she knew they would need to go back to. And she couldn't understand why Donna's attorneys didn't address it more directly. What made matters worse was Donna's own behavior. During the handwriting analysis of the script, JC looked over and noticed Donna and her attorneys passing notes and laughing. To JC, it didn't look like they were taking it seriously at all. That moment stuck with her, a sharp contrast to the gravity of the evidence in front of them.
During that testimony, when she was analyzing the handwriting, explaining every single detail, I was also watching everyone else. Donna and her defense attorneys were passing sticky notes back and forth and just cracking up. They were just trying to keep it low key that they were laughing, weren't taking it serious. But I'm like, this is kind of a big piece of evidence. The defense is trying to paint this picture that Drina was forcing Donna to write all of that. But
wow.
You see the video, she obviously wasn't. But then, they're just sitting there cracking jokes the whole time.
Jurors noticed Donna's behavior beyond her laughing during the script analysis. Instances that carried even more weight. When the state showed the autopsy photos of Dan Markell, Donna broke down at the defense table, sobbing and shaking while her attorney comforted her. To anyone watching in the gallery, it might have looked like raw grief. But the jurors were paying close attention. I asked JC if she thought that reaction was genuine or performative. Her answer? A little of both.
I feel like the fact that there was no tears coming down was kind of an act. I mean, I guess if you've been crying long enough, sometimes you're just you look like you're crying, but no tears are coming, but she wasn't already crying. So maybe she has really dry eyes. Who knows?
She told me the pictures themselves were very intense to look at, difficult for anyone to see. But Donna's reaction may have been over the top. Donna's behavior and the reactions in the courtroom left the jurors confused and wondering whether or not she would take the stand. If Donna testified, would they see the same over-the-top emotions they questioned? Or would she have been able to convince them with her own words? In the end, they never got the chance to find out. When the moment came, Donna faltered. Her attorneys kept asking for more time. Judge Everett pressed her for an answer. Finally, she admitted she didn't feel comfortable. And with that, the defense rested. Donna Adelson never told her story to the jurors. But outside the jury's view, Donna had spoken in hearings leading up to the trial. There, the court got a glimpse of a very different side of her. Donna's shift from a luxury high-rise to a Leon County jail cell wasn't easy for the 73-year-old. She testified at a hearing in February of 2025 that she was being targeted. Once, while brushing her teeth, an inmate twisted her arm and threatened to knock out her pretty white teeth if she didn't buy commissary. In another incident, she said a hand slid up her back. When she shouted for it to stop, the inmate asked her if she liked it. She fought over everything, from the food being too carb-heavy to the conditions of her cell. Donna begged for house arrest, but the court denied her request. Her defense tried fighting things too, like attempting to suppress the trip to Vietnam, the wiretaps, the informants, and the accidental jail recording. Despite all of this, one battle really stood out. Donna's attorneys fought to keep a specific voice off the witness stand: her own son, Rob Adelson.
I'm Dr. Sarah Rahal, the founder and CEO of Armra. I developed Armra Colostrum because I know your body was designed to thrive. It's your natural state, your birthright, and you can reclaim it. Colostrum is the first nutrition we receive in life, with every essential nutrient our bodies need. It's nature's original blueprint for health. After a devastating health crisis almost took my life, I made it my mission to harness this power. Using proprietary technology, Armra captures over 400 bioactive nutrients in every scoop, delivering over 1,000 benefits that transform your health at its foundation. Whether for gut health, metabolism, skin, hair, immunity, mood, energy, fitness, or recovery, I invite you to join this collective revival of health and discover radical transformation for yourself. Visit armra.com, that's ARMRA.com, and enter code CULTURE30 for 30% off your first subscription order. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Need to restock inventory, cover seasonal dips, or manage payroll? OnDeck's small business line of credit provides immediate access to funds, up to $200,000, exactly when your business needs it. With flexible draws, transparent pricing, and full control over repayment, you can tackle unexpected expenses without missing a beat. Apply today at OnDeck.com, and funds could be available as soon as tomorrow. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
Unlike Charlie or Wendy, who have been at the center of this case for years, Rob largely remained in the background. He lives in New York, far removed from the orbit of his family in South Florida. But during Donna's trial, that distance suddenly lapsed. For the first time in any case related to Dan Markel's death, Rob was called to the stand. And Donna's defense wanted no part of it. They feared his testimony. And for good reason. Rob has long believed his mother is guilty. In depositions, Rob had described his mother as sharp, not gullible, and certainly not the kind of person who could be duped into believing an extortion plot without asking questions. He also said pointedly that there was no person who put her own interests first more than Donna Adelson. For a defense that hinged on Donna being misled, confused, or swept along by Charlie, those were damning words. The defense tried to frame Rob differently by telling jurors he was too busy with his medical career and children to stay close to his family. They suggested he had an axe to grind, motivated by anger or spite. But what the jury didn't hear was the real reason Rob's relationship with his family fractured, years before Dan Markel's murder. In an interview for the podcast Over My Dead Body, Rob explained that he once fell in love with a woman his parents refused to accept. She was also a doctor, Indian American, and practiced Hinduism. Rob loved her deeply, but Donna and Harvey threatened to disown him if he married her. Eventually, the pressure wore him down. The very same year Wendy met Dan Markel, Rob broke things off with the woman he loved and married a quote-unquote nice Jewish girl that his family approved of. But family approval couldn't change what his heart wanted. The marriage didn't last. Rob returned to the woman his parents had rejected, and this time married her in a traditional Hindu ceremony. From that point on, the rift with Donna and Harvey never fully healed. Rob and his wife built their lives in New York, distanced both emotionally and geographically from the rest of the Adelsons. Rob testified about the haunting final call he had with his mother when she abruptly ended the conversation after he asked about Dan's murder and the arrest that had been made. But what jurors didn't hear was that Rob's final conversations with Wendy were equally as alarming. In the same interview, Rob recounted the day Wendy called to tell him about Dan's murder. When he asked who she thought could possibly have done this, her response was chilling, stating Dan had no shortage of enemies. He said Wendy grew frustrated with him, accusing him of wanting to know too badly what had happened. But to Rob, his reaction was more than normal. When someone you're close to is murdered, of course you want answers. For Rob, the murder and the way his own family reacted to it cast a long shadow. It left him with a deep suspicion, not just about what happened to Dan, but about what his own family could be capable of. JC said Rob's testimony was some of the most important in the trial, and explained why.
His testimony personally was very powerful. I think it held a lot of weight, especially because, when he was explaining, when he got the call from Donna that Mr. Markel was shot, she just volunteered the detail of someone went up to his door, said, "Hey, are you Dan Markel?" and then shot him. And he brought up the same exact point that I was thinking, how would she know that? Yeah. So that was the first thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take note of that. But that first initial phone call, when she was like, "Don't talk to the FBI," why would you say that? It's very weird. I feel for him, honestly. I can't imagine being in his position. I think he was trying really, really hard to keep it together. So I felt for him. My heart was sad when he was in the stand.
Rob's testimony was incredibly powerful, not just for what he said, but for what it revealed. And while the jury weighed his words carefully, Donna's own feelings toward Rob weren't hidden at all. During the victim impact statements, when the Markels praised Rob as a good and honest man, Donna rolled her eyes at the mention of his name. It was a sharp, visible rejection, and a striking contrast to how she reacted when Wendy was on the stand. And that difference didn't go unnoticed by jurors.
She's really she just had a cold face. It seemed looking down a lot.
So basically totally different than how she was when Wendy was on the stand.
100% different. She kept looking up at Wendy, and then when Rob was up there, she was looking down a lot or just had a straight face.
Wendy Adelson has always been a polarizing figure in this case. To some, she's just a witness, caught in the middle of her family's unraveling. To others, her fingerprints are everywhere, even if prosecutors have never charged her. At her mother's trial, Wendy once again took the stand, but only under the state subpoena. What the jury didn't see is that Wendy refused to testify for her mother's defense. Donna's attorneys fought to call her, but Wendy pushed back, and the court sided with her. That meant the jury only heard what the state and Wendy wanted them to hear, leaving the question, was there something Wendy didn't want to say? On the stand, Wendy admitted her divorce was contentious, the very word Donna's defense had tried so hard to downplay. That contradiction didn't go unnoticed, and her testimony raised the same question that has hovered over this case for more than a decade. How much did Wendy know, and how involved was she really? I asked JC what she thought about Wendy and what role, if any, she believed Wendy played in Dan's murder.
I think she definitely knew. I don't think they could have planned all of what they planned without her. But, like I've said in some of my own videos, I feel like she insulated herself a little too well. Mm-hmm. She is a lawyer after all. She probably, was smart in that sense and got around some things. But I do think she is guilty of being involved. Just, I don't know what to extent. And I also feel like, I don't know, considering like the law that we went over for what Donna was charged with, I don't think, based off of what we've seen during the trial, I could convict her of being guilty for those charges. But definitely something, like whether it's accessory or, I mean, even conspiracy, I do think she should be next.
While Wendy was on the stand, JC noticed something else. She said Wendy carefully avoided looking at her mother. And in the rare moments when Wendy did try to steal a quick glance toward the defense table, Donna's reaction was immediate. JC said Donna seemed excited, like she was waiting for it, as if she was hoping for even the briefest reconnection with her daughter. That moment and Donna's reaction held more weight after jurors learned Wendy and Donna haven't spoken since Donna's arrest in 2023. For the jurors, Wendy's testimony was a reminder of just how complicated this case is, not only in the evidence, but in the fractured family dynamics behind it. She admitted the divorce was contentious. She distanced herself from her mother, and she left lingering questions about how much she knew and when she knew it. But ultimately, Wendy's role wasn't what the jury was asked to decide. Their task? To weigh the evidence and determine the fate of Donna Adelson. After 9 days of testimony and weeks of watching Donna in the courtroom, the moment finally came when the jury was ready to deliberate. Deliberations lasted just over 3 hours, almost identical to Charlie's trial. This is the part of the trial that is always so difficult, waiting and not knowing what's happening behind the scenes. I asked JC to walk us through what happened when the cameras went dark and the jury room door closed.
So we're all just kind of like standing there for a minute because the bailiffs were explaining like what happens now, that we can't start discussing until they're out, but they had to go get the evidence and bring it in. So people were talking, just normal conversation. And then once they brought the evidence in and said, you need to pick your foreperson, we're leaving the room. But then I feel like I broke in there and I was like, does anyone want to be the foreperson? I knew I wanted to, but, I was allowing the chance. And I was like, can I do it? Like, I would love to do it. Once we sat down, and it was basically like for a second, we were all just quiet. And it's like, let's start. Like, we did not take an initial vote because I don't think that would have been right. It's just like, who has questions? Like, who wants to like get something off their chest about what we've just experienced the last 2 weeks? So we started that. And then I feel like about 10, 15 minutes in, then we're like, okay, let's start going over things. Like, let's read the definitions of the law. Like, let's read what principle is and like what that means in this case and all of those things. Talk about it. Like, does anyone have questions about that? No, let's move on. So we start talking about the evidence that we think is damning for her and like could cause the guilty verdict. And about that like hour and a half mark is when we took like our first vote. And like I've said, there's a few people, like 2 to 3, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that were just like not 100% sure. They were like, I'm like 90% sure she's guilty. But like, I'm just confused on this one point of like one of the charges. Like, I don't know if she's guilty for that. So if I agree with like 2 of the 3 elements, do I really think she's guilty on that charge? I don't know. Like, let's talk about it. So then it's basically like, okay, great. So like, what questions are you stuck on? Like, what is confusing? Maybe we can like all help each other clear it up. Maybe I'm being biased in this sense because we all got along. We all liked each other, but I feel like we were like the dream jury, like super well balanced, all walks of life, 12 completely different ways of thinking, but we were still able to come together cordially and reach like a very serious decision.
Donna erupted after the guilty verdict, igniting a social media firestorm as people tried to read her lips or isolate the clip, trying to figure out exactly what she said. Now, I had to know, so I asked JC, what did Donna say?
After saying like, oh my God, or whatever she said initially, she's like, you're convicting an innocent woman, with her fake crocodile tears.
Donna's eruption in the courtroom may have grabbed headlines, but one thing remains clear. She isn't accepting her fate. Before the dust could even settle, Donna filed an appeal asking for a new trial. Her reasons ranged from juror interviews to claims that disruptions and reactions from the gallery had influenced the jury's view of the defense. Now, when I asked Jacy about those supposed disruptions, she told me she had no idea what I was talking about. Whatever Donna's attorneys are claiming, it didn't reach the jury, and it certainly didn't shape their verdict. For the Markel family, no verdict could ever bring back their son. And for Dan's 2 boys, nothing will replace the father who should have been there for birthdays, graduations, and milestones still to come. But out of tragedy, the Markels have fought to create something lasting, a legacy born from their loss. Ruth Markel has shared her journey in a book called The Unveiling, which shines a light on the cost of violence and the resilience of those left behind. They've also turned pain into purpose through advocacy. In 2022, Florida passed the Markel Act, a law that allows grandparents to petition for visitation rights if one parent is found culpable for the death of another. It acts as a safeguard to ensure children aren't cut off from the family of a murdered parent. The ripples of this case extend far beyond Tallahassee. They are measured not only in guilty verdicts, but in lives changed, in laws rewritten, and in the determination of a family who refuses to let Dan's memory fade. In the end, this story is not just about conspiracies and convictions. It's about a brilliant scholar, a devoted son, and a loving father, Dan Markel.
Imagine relying on a dozen different software programs to run your business, none of which are connected, and each one more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one platform. Doesn't Odoo sound amazing? Let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. Sign up today at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. When you use Angie for your home projects, you know all your jobs will be done well. From roof repair to emergency plumbing and more, done well. So the next time you have a home project, leave it to the pros. Get started at Angie.com.